So this is the build, and I don't know why, but in The Sims it doesn't seem to have as much of a presence as it does in movie. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit underwhelmed, and it's as one-to-one as I could get it. So wait, my wallpaper's weird. Yeah, and it's as one-to-one as I could get it, so I don't really know, like, what's up with it. I mean, the sign really doesn't help. That sign is sad. But anyway, let's stop being depressed about the outside and let's go inside. So we come inside and we have this entrance desk area, and then we have, it's a bit empty. It's how it was in the film. Maybe it had a bit more back in its heyday, but we come through the lighted archway into the main dining area. We have the picture wall over here and a men's bathroom. I don't tend to do gendered bathrooms because I don't like it, but they were gendered bathrooms, especially back in like the 80s and 90s. So I did pop a potty in to make it toddler compatible. And then we have the arcade around here with various activities that will probably distract your diners, so I don't know how practical that's going to be for gameplay. But then we have the office. It's not really to scale. I did really struggle with scaling in this place, and that's because places like this are just built with like set pieces, and it's not, yeah, it's just all a bit weird. But we have the stages and we have the dining area. Now the booths in the game are like 3 tiles wide, and that wasn't gonna work, so I did do these big chairs instead. And then we have the girls' bathroom, the same sort of setup with a potty. And then coming in this way, we have a corridor with the employee of the month thing. And then we have storage in here with the delivery hatch. And then out here, we have just like a little bin and staff area. You can imagine what that sofa feels like and smells like. It's disgusting. And then coming in here, we have like the prize counter storage, which leads back out into the dining hall and the prize counter. And then coming in here, we have the kitchen with a little walk-in freezer. It's very tight, but it does the job. And then we have the main kitchen in here, like so. It's just a kitchen, really. And then this leads outside, and then there's another external emergency exit here, which leads back into the dining hall. I think the dining hall and the arcade is like my favourite part of this. And then in here is just like the little techie backstage, I guess, parts and service room, which is probably the most unrealistic of all the rooms. But as I said, floor planning this was really difficult, but the main important part is the main dining hall, I feel, and I think we got that down, so I'm quite happy with how this turned out. I'm going to do the outro here because I think this is the most aesthetic part of the build. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this. I did have a comment asking for more FNaF builds, so I thought I would do one. If you would like any more FNaF builds, please let me know what you would like. If you'd like any other fandom builds, I would absolutely love to attempt. And if you want just like random storyline builds, I'd also love to do that. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you'd like to see. No idea is a bad idea. Also, let me know what part of this build was your favourite. I would love to know. But with that being said, I think it's time to let you get back to the rest of your day. I hope it's a good one, and I will see you next time. Bye!